Recording is on.
There we go. And we're live. Woo! Our October Central Florida ISC Squared chapter meeting. Thank you all for being here, taking time out of your crazy and busy lives and days with all the fun distractions that you may or may not have at home. I'm looking at you there, Joel, with your adorable kid there. Again, real excited to try and at least bring us together some way, in one way, whether it's granted it's virtual in these unprecedented and crazy times. But I'm excited with the presentations. I'm really, really excited who we've got presenting tonight. Some really neat stuff we've got from Eber, who you're going to meet shortly with regards to ongoing threats. I think he's going to scare the crap out of some of you because our conversation already, I'm already thinking, yep, it's going to happen. And then later on, we're going to, actually, here we go. Later on, we're going to hear from Glenn Leifheit, who is a senior security product manager up at Microsoft. But he's going to talk nothing about Microsoft or Microsoft products. He's going to talk about mentorship. It's a presentation he's given before. He's done through ISC Squared. And I'm really excited. I've been wanting to have him present here at the chapter for a while. And this is one of the perks of the virtuality of it is I can have anybody present from anywhere in the world present to the chapter. So I'm looking forward to that. Big shout out to 8x8. Appreciate us giving us this platform where we can bring everybody together. Andy, I know you're online. You want to say just a couple of words about 8x8? What you guys do?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Andrew Jalbert with 8x8. We are a global, publicly traded, unified communications and contact center platform, and we put security first. Just a quick plug. It just sounded security-ish. So Mattermost and Jitsi, which is the foundation of the video meetings platform you're on today, are hosting a hacking from home event November 10th through the 17th. It's an opportunity where if you can come up with a solution to improve remote working, there's a first prize $3,000, second $2,000, and third $1,000. I'll put the link in the chat. You're all encouraged and welcome to join.
Cool.
And that's my plug.
Sounds good, man. Thank you very much. So, of course, 8x8 helps us out as well as all of our other sponsors that we do have, Gold Sky, CyberArk, Fortress, Valencia, ECPI, Full Sail, when we're able to actually be on campus. Speaking of ECPI, I don't think we have anybody, because Kate left, on the line. But one of the discussions that I've been having is with David Cruz, who is one of the professors up at ECPI and our main contact. And they are actually having classes on campus with regards to the nursing school that they have. I asked the question, I said, do you think we could have a meeting there, a hybrid type meeting? He didn't see a problem with it. We'd have to, of course, socially distance, wear masks and all that other good stuff. So it's something we're considering trying to do, but maybe like a hybrid event where we would limit the people that could be in the room, limited to like 25 or 30, because those are big rooms. If you've had an opportunity to come to those meetings that we've had at ECPI, we could put everybody at like one desk, every other desk. We could probably get 20 to 30 people in the room with a presenter and still keep it safe. Don't know about food, honestly, but just to get something in real life and then stream it, we'd have some cameras set up and stream it through a computer and make it live that way. So we're working on it. We're working through logistics, conversations with ECPI, but we're like I said, I'm trying to see if we can't get this back to something in real life for some folks, and then, you know, eventually get us all back together again, nice and safe. I think everybody here that I've seen on the call, looks familiar. I recognize everybody's name. So I know I don't need to share with you in depth our foundation, our objectives, but essentially connect, educate, inspire, secure, and hopefully we'll get you some of that this evening. Pretty well everybody knows the board, but if not, I'm James McQuiggan. I know we've got Christopher Hickornell, who's our membership. He's the when you're looking at the videos, he's the guy with the cool study, all the books in the background, green t-shirt. Yes. He's read every single one of those books too. I see we got Amy Rooks on the line. She handles our sponsorship. We got Debbie, our chapter secretary. She brought us all the amazing food. Oh, wait, sorry. Wrong conversation.
Didn't cook this time.
That's usually what follows when I mention Debbie's name, all the amazing food that we get. But no, alas, we will get back there. Walter couldn't make it tonight. He had, he had the day job to take care of. And of course, Paul, who's our chapter treasurer, and then Tom Plummer, who handles our outreach. So I couldn't do this chapter without them, and thankful to have them a part of all supporting all of you. All right, so let's talk about some upcoming events, because we're not the only game in town, just the best. But anyway, so virtual meetings for the rest of the year. We got one next month, November 16th. That's the first day of ISC Squared Congress. We're going to do it in the evening again. Not tied to ISC Squared Congress directly, but we'll be having that meeting after that day. So after you've heard all kinds of cool presentations, right now what we got lined up is we're going to hear from UCF, their research team over there, with regards to phishing and ransomware and some other really cool studies they've done. They approached me a couple weeks ago, so I'm going to have them present that night. And then on a personal development, professional development level, there's a colleague I've met. Her name's Caitlin, and she has a company called Battleship. Battleship, there's another term that comes after it, and I'm forgetting it. But anyway, they deal with resume building, interview skills. So whether you're trying to get back into the workforce or entering the workforce or looking for something else to do in the workforce, she's got a fantastic program put together. I'm going to have her come present, talk about interviews, resumes, and other, professional development type skills next month. So that's what I've got lined up. Eventbrite should be going out hopefully next week, and certainly not 2 weeks before, but want to get it out sooner for the rest of you. Also, the officers did meet for our annual dinner that we always do, to try and come up with new ideas. One of my biggest pet peeves is these events are essentially almost like a webinar. Try to make them engaging. And so there's some noise. Let's see. There we go. Just mute everybody. You guys can still hear me, right? Shake some heads. Okay, good. We all met. We had dinner. We discussed some new and exciting ways we can engage everybody next year. So some of the things, this is what we came up with. These aren't the be all and end all. There's some other stuff we've got. But we thought one thing might be real interesting, maybe do like a book club presentation. We have a book for the quarter. Anybody and anyone that wants to read it, reads it, and then we'll come in and kind of have a panel discussion. That could be one idea. Could be other panel discussions regarding particular tools, topics, but something where we can involve you, the members. If you want to speak, if you've got topics and you want to present, let us know. But we want to try and do things that be more engaged and more interactive with everybody when they're attending the meeting. I will have the new schedule and the dates. I'll have that out next month. We haven't had a chance to. We'll still keep the same format right now with virtually. It'll probably be the fourth Monday of the month. We'll continue that going forward. If we start getting our in real life sessions back, then we'll shift back to the breakfast briefs and the evening events. ISSA, Patrick Heisinger, I know, is on the call. They've got their event October 9th. No, you've got that's passed. Sorry, I forgot to change the date. November 20th. Is that the Friday or is that the Tuesday? Because Dan sent out the notice this morning and I think he put the wrong date. Yeah, November 20th is a Friday. That's their next lunch and learn. You can visit their website, check out their registration links. ISACA, they're kind of on hold. They really haven't been doing many events, and as is CITRUSEC, they've been on hold because of the pandemic. But Central Florida ISSA, they're running like gangbusters with events every month as well, which is great. Another event I want to share with you, PegaSec. This thing is really cool. Chris Fagorzian, who's a member of the chapter, he's the CISO for UCF. They are doing a virtual cybersecurity expo this Friday, absolutely free to attend. There's the link. You can go check out some fantastic speakers. Dan Lepresto, who we've had in our chapter. Roger Grimes, who I work with at KnowBe4, awesome speaker. He's going to be talking about quantum. You got Special Agent Andy Lenzen, who also is a member of our chapter. Great guy. He's going to give a good topic, a good presentation. And then Clay, Matt, and Mike, they're going to be discussing some new research they've done. So if you've got some time to kill on Friday, you want to sit and listen to some speakers, free event there for you to listen to. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention B-Sides. That's coming up the week from Saturday, Friday and Saturday. Get your tickets. If you're a student, you get to go for free. Otherwise, it's like $25. This is a no-brainer, or $20 actually. $50 if you do the VIP. So highly encourage you to go check it out. Some great speakers are going to be there. They got some great workshops as well. You can see the workshops when you go into Eventbrite and you go to register. You'll be able to see the different ones. They've got Dr. Sunny Ware, who we've had with the chapter, present. She's doing her web application pen testing. You've got Elise Dennis. She is doing phishing, how to do phishing, which is really, really cool, and a variety of other workshops. So do check those out. And of course, as I've already talked about it a little bit already, ISC Squared Security Congress. It is done through Bright Talk. They're going to try and keep it as engaging as possible. I've been in communications and chatting with them about what they've got planned. It sounds very, very cool. Certainly affordable. I think we are now past the early bird, so I think it's like $400 to attend. But check out the link and you'll be able to see the prices. November 16th, 17th, and 18th. We are sending six board chapter members to Congress. We basically had funds set aside for other events. We couldn't use it because we couldn't do the events. So we basically took the money and bought 10 passes, and we're giving 6 of them away to the members. Congratulations, though, to John, Mark, Paul, and Stephen. They are our winners from August and September. We are going to draw 2 more names this evening, and we're going to do that after our presentation from Glenn. So hopefully you all stick around so you can see if your name gets picked. So the Center for Cyber Safety and Education, just want to give you an update on what they're doing at ISC Squared Congress, because last year, you might remember, they did the Geeks versus Nerds showdown, which was really, really cool, a lot of fun, but it was their fundraiser. This year, they're doing Cyber Bingo, which is their fundraiser. It's going to be the Tuesday night from 4:30 to 6 p.m. $20 gets you 2 bingo cards. And there's going to be 5 different games. So $20. I mean, everybody can do this. Bring the kids, bring the family. It'd be a lot of fun. You can buy more than just 2 cards. If you want to get 4, it's $40. You want to get 6, it's $60, and so forth. But you just go out to the website, which I've got here. I'll pop up in a sec. I'll send the link out. But it's open to the public, so you don't have to be an ISC Squared member. Anybody and everybody can play. So tell your family, tell your friends, because the other cool thing is those are your hosts for the event. Me and my good buddy Javad, who you remember from Congress last year, who spoke at our chapter meeting. The 2 of us will be the, I guess, bingo barkers. I don't know what the real term is, but we'll be calling out the numbers and providing color commentary and having a grand old time. So come on out, if nothing else, just to see me and Javad make fun of each other and all that. I guarantee you that's worth the $20 alone. There's a link. It's a long link, I know, but I'll make sure I get it out. We'll either get it in the chat somehow, but I'll get it to everybody, show notes, and so forth. All right, so chapter membership info. Got 247 active members. Thank you very much for all of those that are a part of it. If you are a chapter member, if you are an ISC Squared certification holder, they're looking for people to help write the exams, coming up with questions. You can send an email with your member ID and name to workshops@isc2.org, and you'll be in touch with Tony, and she will work with you to get you involved in some of the workshops. It's really cool to do. I've never done one, but I've heard a lot of great things about it. But you do have to be an ISC Squared certification holder to do that. And you can see all the different certs they're needing questions for. So something fun. You get all kinds of cool swag. I think they pay you, but check with Tony on that. One of the new things that is coming up from ISC Squared in the community page is what we call the Group Hub. And this is going to be a location that will be available for our chapter members. You can go out to the community site and register. It's absolutely free. You don't have to pay for it. But you go out and you register, and you can you'll have a screen name. If you email us your screen name, we will send you an invite through the community site to invite you into the group hub, because one of the things we want to do is use the group hub to store the links and in the information regarding our chapters, anything other announcements and those kind of things. I know we've got LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and we'll continue to use those in their capacity, but the ISC Squared Community Hub is a great place that we know that we can allow just our members to have access to. With Facebook, Twitter, the other social media, it's not as easy to maintain that, but with you being our chapter members, you can go out, create a community account, send us the name, and then we will add you into the group hub, and then you'll be able to be a part of it, and we'll have all kinds of cool stuff in there for you. If you got any questions, as always, just email us at info mailbox. Okay, I've done enough yapping, and I've actually been able to keep it within the time frame. So I am very excited, and a big shout out to Debbie for inviting Eber, who is the incident manager incident management program manager. That's a mouthful, for Cyber Scout. He's got his doctorate in cybersecurity. That's pretty cool. But he's also been a part of the Rhode Island National Guard. So Eber, thank you for that service, your service to the country. But I'm real excited that he's here. He's got some great stories I know he's going to share with you. Like I said, probably scare the dickens out of us in regards to his topics. So Eber, go ahead and take it away, sir. I am going to stop sharing if I can here.
Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for having me. It's much appreciated. And been looking forward to have this conversation and talk to you guys about some of the current trends and issues that we're seeing out in the market. Going to be focusing today on the small, medium-sized businesses, so an SME market, more centric. That's what we focus here at Cyber Scout. We deal with tiny businesses from a bakery to a more medium-sized business that's international, that has multiple locations, but we're normally not dealing with with target breach level breaches or anything of that size. Want to talk to you about some of the recent things that we're seeing, a little bit of trends, a little bit of historical information. Some of you, I'm sure all of you with your backgrounds have had exposure to these threats, and you probably know a lot about some of the stuff that we're going to touch on. So for some of you, some of this probably won't be news. For some of you, it may, but we'll get into it a little bit, and hopefully we can all, you can all have something to take away from this by the end of it. I'm also known to rant here and there, so if if I go too deep or something, just raise a hand. So, some of the statistics, everything that we're talking about here is going to be live, by the way. So it's going to be live data that we are constantly gathering as our case management develops and our operation keeps growing. Going to start, I think, where as by commonality, and some of you I'm sure know by now, the most common threat out there, especially affecting the SME business, is business email compromise. So BEC for short. So BEC is certainly the most common threat. It's all over the place. It's only more common than ever now in 2020, with so many people working from home, COVID, creating this remote environment that we're all dealing with. People get a lot more distracted out there, with the kids running around, the dog making noises, and people are trying to conduct business at home. It certainly has had an effect on business email compromise, and it also looks like our threat actors, as always, they're evolving, which, we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. And, I think that's another reason for why BECs are so common. We're seeing this across the board everywhere, jurisdiction speaking, not just in the US or specific states, but we have a a strong workflow of BC coming in from everywhere you can imagine, whether it's Australia, whether it's Sweden or Canada. This is really happening all over the place, some of these things. And they are, and while BC, we're talking about SMEs here, BCs really affect all sizes and all levels of, or types of organizations, and mostly because of us humans. We're all prone to making mistakes. We're all prone to not being able to always pay so much attention when things are hectic, and the SME market is especially under threat here because of training, resources, and other factors that come into play. So regarding BC, you recognize some of the couple logos here. This is where we're seeing the biggest caseload come in. It's Microsoft Office 365. It's Gmail, G Suite, email enterprises, and especially in the SME market, you still have a good amount of the classic terminal exchange email for the local small business. That's still common out there. It's they're migrating a lot to these cloud-based systems like G Suite or Azure, or Office 365, but we still see a good amount of local exchange. And just because something's local versus cloud, I wanted to make sure that it was clear. We're only seeing more cloud now because it's so popular, because from a financial perspective, it's so attractive to have Office 365. It's just so much easier and cheaper for the SME, which is probably a big reason why we're seeing it. But the exchange stuff is still happening all over the place. So according to all our records and everything else, why does this happen, right? I think it's always important to get at the why early on, as it's a good way of providing context to the client, and who's the victim. They're always wondering, why me? And in the end of the day, it's never personal, right? These folks are looking to accomplish normally certain things with these activities, whether it's identity theft. We're constantly seeing schemes where threat actors are asking for personal details, not just financial information, via their email compromises through phishing methods and other social engineering methods. And then they use that information to compromise, open accounts and achieve do other nefarious things with that information. Recently, we even saw a small surge of, I called it the resume cases, where a business email compromise happened at an organization, who then the threat actor utilized that email account once he had access to create job postings, and they were receiving resumes and gathering personal information about applicants through that process, which we thought was quite interesting. It was a quick surge. We saw it happen for about a 3-week period, scattered across a few states in the US, but I thought it was just a very interesting social engineering scheme. It's not something we see very often. So I thought that was an interesting one to bring up. But identity theft is still is a big reason why, behind the why for BCs. Tax fraud is another major reason. We specialize in work with accountants, along with health professionals and other industries, but I cannot emphasize how much the tax entities are targeted. Not just during tax season, that's somewhat of a given, but even throughout the rest of the year, threat actors have a better understanding of what these folks do, the level of information that they host, and so they're always under target. And in the SME market, accountants tend to be, our tax preparers tend to be 2, 3, 4, 5 people offices. So they really don't have that much of an education. Their, IT presence is minimal. normally an external provider that they've had a relationship with for a while, but the very classic, the IT is there when something breaks, not a whole lot of a proactive footprint in the environment. So they're fairly susceptible to some of these schemes. These folks are busy, especially in 2020, where tax deadlines are being pushed all over the place. They're running around, and that rush and the need to work from home, when you combine under that totality of all those circumstances that we're facing right now, we're seeing really high numbers of business email compromise in the tax preparer landscape right now. And these compromises often lead to a local compromise and escalation of privileges, which eventually leads to fraudulent filings and diversion of funds. And in the end of the day, funds are really what these folks are after, right? Funds, targets, right? Target acquisitions. Another thing I wanted to bring up, these business email compromises are often looking to phish one victim so they can then phish hundreds of thousands of other victims and keep a chain that's propagating, of just phishing operations. But really, in the end of the day, when it really comes down to it, we all know, threat actors do what they do for one and one thing mostly, and that's the Benjamins. They everything in the end somehow reverts to money, whether it's to steal identities so you can open credit lines on behalf of the victims, escalate privileges within an environment so you can perform fraudulent filings or infiltrate someone's account receivables, change banking details, things of that sort. We're seeing a lot of the complaints being a fraudulent filing or a system compromise, an application compromise, and it all starts as a BEC. And because the SME market is so fragile due to its nature, where, like I said, most of these folks have an external IT provider. They don't have a very robust security program, if any, and they're just in a position where it really is a rich market for threat actors. And while they're not collecting millions and huge amounts of dollars, it's really a volume game. And so the BEC is a perfect attack vector for that, because as you all can, I'm sure you can imagine, you compromise someone with a 10-year-old account with thousands of clients, or a massive address book there, you have a lot of room, just statistically speaking, to phish others and gain new victims. So BC, our trends, our numbers are showing right now as the most common. We don't think it's going to lose that battle as far as commonality of attack anytime soon, especially in the SME market. There is still, unfortunately, some of the old myths are still around there. I'm a small business, no one cares about me, no one targets people like me. That stuff is still out there. I'm still battling that situation. We're still seeing clients be perplexed as to why they were hit. And in the end, a lot of these things lead to a lack of training. They lead to a lack of infrastructure, security measures, and all the proactive security steps that one should take. We're often seeing folks in this industry bypass, in this sector, to bypass some of these things for functionality, or just for often just a lack of know-how. So it's really important, for us to get a message out there about BEC and some of the issues that we're seeing, even some that are industry specifics. Because it's security professionals such as yourselves that can push that message across to the everyday business owner out there, who hopefully will heed advice and take the proper preparations to fortify their defenses. With that being said, one of the things that we have seen also that I wanted to bring up here as a security measure is the lack of basic features and that are causing huge issues in BEC. I wanted to talk about a little bit, one, multi-factor authentication. I'm sure you all know what that's all about. I hope you're all using it in your emails, but it's, I think, quite surprising, something as simple as MFA, especially to the SME market, and how often we see victims not have that enabled. So we're seeing, a good amount of dictionary and brute force attacks on some of these accounts, and these algorithmic type attacks are a leading cause to business accounts being compromised, and they could potentially be mitigated through enabling MFA, especially in the SME market where authentication isn't as complex as a large company who really has to worry about issuing, spending crazy amounts of money, issuing devices, or having a BYOD program or something set up to allow for proper authentication. A lot of these SME clients are ripe in position wise, where they could easily make the implementation and enabling of some of these features, but they don't because of a lack of know-how and some of those other things that we touched about, such as the mindset of nothing's going to happen. So MFA is huge for BEC right now, especially in the Office 365 and some of these the G Suite stuff that we're seeing there. Out of the BEC breaches that we've had over the past 30 days, 99% of the clients did not have MFA enabled. So I figured that'd be an interesting little figure to share there. And over the past year, it has been about a 92-93% of victims of BECs do not have multi-factor authentication enabled. So is it a silver bullet? Of course not. As you all know, there's always a way to skin that cat when it comes to digital compromise. But at the same time, it's a staggering statistic that I don't think should be ignored. And when you're talking about SMEs, when you're talking about your dentist offices, your accountants, you're talking about your small manufacturer, your retail business, it's too easy almost for some of these environments, for some of these clients to set up that MFA feature and take advantage of some of that security. In most of these platforms like Microsoft or Google don't charge any extra funds or subscription fees for these services, yet they're not being taken advantage of. So that's one I wanted to touch base on. And then when it comes to BC, I'm sure you've all heard this, training. That's really going to be the number one. There's no filter you can set. There's no alert you can put in place. There's no MFA that can protect an email account from that person who's not paying attention and doesn't recognize that an external email is in front of them with a wrong header, with a wrong domain or something of that sort, with just a wrong address, and clicks on a link, that doesn't spot the questionable English used in some of these emails, or differences in tone from someone they talk to all the time. These are all the things that we can mitigate through training. I spend, unfortunately, not enough, I would say, of my time in these proactive realms, training entities. Unfortunately, it's not something that I think a lot of businesses take seriously unless they're a larger business, probably because of funding being number one reason. But there are resources, Cyber Scout being one of them. We do short training sessions proactively with SME clients. It's we try to make it as affordable as possible. We make it often in preparation in conjunction with phishing simulations. So we find that to be most effective. And I think that's a strategy that I wanted to share with you all. The education and the training is great. But, as I've learned, not just in this sector, but in my decade plus with the military, death by PowerPoint is just really difficult for a lot of people to deal with, right? And to sit through an hour and change of a PowerPoint deck, especially when it's mandatory training or something that you may or may not understand, it really is difficult. So we try to make these trainings interactive, almost tabletop-esque, where we're letting the audience really kind of give some feedback, and we have found that approach has been pretty powerful. So I wanted to share that with you. And the other insight is, if possible, as you're offering, if any of you offer these kinds of services, to follow that up with actual phishing simulations go really far. And we've seen huge differences. I can't share some of these, statistics just out in the open about some of the recent clients and the differences, in cases that we have ongoing right now, as far as the staff's ability to spot these issues, when you have a situation where a client is doing just an educational remote session, something similar to this on that topic, versus the client that does that on top of quarterly or sporadic phishing simulations on targeted and company wide. And a lot of the stuff is out there. I think a lot of SMEs think that this is beyond them from a risk perspective or from an affordability perspective. But there's a lot of providers, not just us, who can provide these sorts of services. And I'm sure some of you folks can provide these services. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of that kind of training, especially if you can follow it with practical exercises. Moving, talking about a little bit more about BCs. What are we seeing as far as after the compromise happens? Now you have an incident. What are the risks? What are we, what kind of problems are we seeing here? We're seeing loss of PII. We're seeing, breach notification statutes coming into place, which then leads often to some business interruption, especially for the small practitioners who doesn't have managing staff to always deal with these things, and they have to take time out of their day to deal with it. Loss in revenue because they're paused dealing with something, because they cannot schedule or organize part of their services, because they're now being told, halt doing anything to this account for the time being. And then of course reputational damage comes along the way, especially for some of the professionals that we mentioned, right? Some of the healthcare professionals, the tax professionals, those people are especially at risk for BEC, because I cannot tell you how many times I talk to an accountant who says, yes, we have an FTP portal, and we beg our clients to, send everything that's sensitive via that portal. But at the same time, every single day, somebody sends them a PDF W-2. It's a common story that we see all the time. And these folks end up having very sensitive information on their mailbox. And when an email compromise happens there, most of the time they end up having to, the jurisdictional breach statute and data breach notification statute is triggered because of access or acquisition due to forwarding, downloading of a mailbox, you name it. And it ends up leading to notification, which can have massive reputational damage to some of these tax preparers or health professionals, because, well, I mean, it's pretty evident, right? After all, if you're sending someone a letter saying, hey, we lost your information, it was acquired by a threat actor, they may or may not want to do business with you. So mitigation wise, right, there's only so many efforts that a business can take, when they're part of a email compromise, especially in the SME market. These folks don't have internal IT or some regulatory board or some big apparatus set in place to respond or think about the future actions that they can take because of one incident. So most of the time, an investigation followed by recommendations or followed by notification is going to be what happens. Most of the time, we're being brought in. My team's being brought in to run an investigation, primarily to understand whether exfiltration happened through a sync, a download of a mailbox, copying. A common thing that we see is a threat actor essentially gather a large number of emails and place it in a folder that they know or have an idea that the user will likely not see, and then forward that out to an email box external, or at least monitor it for a while. So that's the kind, that's one thing that we're looking for, right? Obviously, answering root cause issues, being able to provide that information to the victim is key. So that way they're armed with at least a base understanding of how it happened, so they can then try to prevent it. And those are some probably the main goals on an investigation perspective. But investigations unfortunately come into problems, especially in the SME markets, and I think I really wanted to highlight that here. Unlike the larger companies who have really technical and skilled individuals taking care of their digital security, SMEs don't have that. It's often the client themselves who set up, an email account for the business, or they had, an external mom and pop shop from down the street come in and take care of that for them, however many years in the past. And so there's a lot of problems that often rise from that, such as, mostly misconfigured environments. So we're talking, a lack of email audit data because auditing was never enabled in Office 365, or, a client who handles highly sensitive data, but is not informed by their security professional that auditing and certain security features only come at a certain level of licensing. Things of that sort can have a devastating effect post-incident, and these are common issues that we're running into. I couldn't tell you how many times we have a financial advisor, a law firm, or someone that has a lot of very sensitive information who trades in this information via email, has an email compromise, and has absolutely no audit data available other than maybe at best a message trace report that's not that informative, especially when it comes, when it's in regards to breach notification. And sometimes, unfortunately, these people find themselves in a place where they are now notifying hundreds, and sometimes even thousands of people, which can come at huge costs, to the client. It's often maxing out insurance policies if they even have cyber insurance. It's coming to a lot of out of pocket costs, and then it's coming to that hit to their reputation. It consumes a lot of their time dealing with these incidents, dealing with clients and their fury after the fact. So across the board, just not a great situation. Aside from, an investigation, unfortunately, SME market investigations tend to be the end of mitigation. We find that at most, the advice that the victims in the SME market are taking are something along the lines of just setting up MFA, doing standard remediation such as password changes, forced signouts, things of that sort to remediate the account, but then they move on. We're building some statistics right now over the last few years, and hopefully maybe in the future I'll be able to share that with you guys about what I'm calling BEC squared, essentially, organizations that suffered an email compromise and then suffered another email compromise because they did not take action on recommendations post the first incident. It's a little hard to track that, but we have some ways that we're implementing that's helping us gather some of this data. It's not ready for the public yet, but I hope to be able to share that with you and with your organization in the coming months, and into the probably Q1, maybe Q2 of next year. But I think that's going to highlight some very interesting facts about how the SME market handles an initial incident and how they handle moving forward after that initial incident. Second here is the ransomware. I think some of you probably expected this to be number one. I certainly would understand why. It's certainly happening all over the place. Again, this is another one that we see happening all over the globe. In some ways, I almost like to think, I almost think that ransomware is the number one threat to SMEs, even on top of the business email compromise, potentially because of the severity. This really puts a stop, as to businesses. This is the one that keeps a lot of people awake. This is the one that sounds scary to most businesses because of the ability that these threat actors have from stopping an entity from conducting business. So that it's a high priority. It's becoming a little less common. I wanted to touch base a little bit on the whole myth of I'm too small to be targeted by ransomware groups. It's becoming a bit less common. How we're not hearing it as much as we used to, but it's still a thing. It's people still think that threat actors only go after Garmin and those of organizations of that size. But I'll tell you, it could not be further from the truth. It's not just accountants here. It's not just folks who hold very sensitive data who are being targeted. I've had bakeries be victims of ransomware, auto shops. I could not tell you how many of those. None of these people hold exactly, PII, PHI, or any kind of sensitive information from a legal perspective, yet they're all suffering from a ransomware infection. They're all coming into the office on Monday and finding they can't open their recipes or they can't run their their EDR or whatever other proprietary application they have because files are encrypted. So there's a lot going on in the ransomware SME market. It's been booming since about early 2018. That's when it really started taking off, mostly because of Dharma and the subvariants, Dharma, GandGrab. These were huge threat actor organizations in the ransomware landscape who were wreaking havoc across the SME market. And unless you really worked probably, specifically with SMEs or in the insurance business, you probably didn't see it, right? Because somehow ransomware still to this day only talked about in the news, when it's, the state of Connecticut. They recently had a school system who had their systems encrypted and kids couldn't take the bus and school had to be halted and things were crazy overnight. Or, you hear about it when it's Garmin or with some major company. But there's so much more activity here in these small mom and pop businesses. I mean, thousands. It's incredible how much ransomware we're seeing out there in the SME market. Yet no one talks about it, which is very, very interesting. Some of the top players that we're seeing, some figures here for you. Dharma is still big. There's a lot of sub variants of Dharma that we kind of lump into a little bit of Dharma currently that you see activity on. Some of the variants that have evolved from that started from players that belong to Dharma organizations that started other organizations such as Phobos or GandCrab, or Sodi no Kibi. These who were started by some of the players in Ryuk, who are now, as you may have heard, there's a newer group out there called Conti, CONTI. They gained popularity about 4 months ago or so, 5 months ago, and at least in the SME market. And they were allegedly started by some of the players over at Ryuk. And Conti, like Ryuk, is very aggressive. They're a little nasty. They're not the easiest group to deal with, but that's gaining popularity. I'm sure you've heard of some of the other new groups like Craggle or the Maze group. These are also groups starting to gain some traction. But in the SME market, we're still seeing a lot of Lockbit, a lot of Phobos, a lot of Ryuk, some Matrix, and Sodi no Kibi's quickly gaining ground. Right before we started this session, I was just chatting with James, and we were just talking about a current Sodi no Kibi case that we're dealing with. So these guys are coming up a lot. We do some work and we partner up with a company called Takeovers. I'm sure you guys, if you're familiar with ransomware, you've probably heard of them before. And I wanted to share one of the stats that we have been working with them to track, and that's the root cause, the manner of compromise. And in the SME market, RDP compromise is the number one by far way on how these businesses are being targeted by the ransomware threat actor groups, especially right now with COVID. I cannot believe almost. I mean, we expected it a little bit, so I guess I can't believe, but it's pretty impressive to think, okay, we're all having to work from home now. We're going to see a lot of ransomware because of rushing to get folks remote and RDP vulnerabilities, being exploited. And we could not be more right. Since the lockdown, since March, we have seen about 92% of ransomware cases starting as brute force attacks on standard RDP ports and other forms of RDP compromise. It's happening in every industry that we see. We're seeing it from some medical, from dentists to just to any kind of doctor, to manufacturers, to distribution. It's really any business right now should be worried about ransomware, especially these SMEs who don't have funds to set up a more robust remote apparatus to deal with functionality during COVID. And so I cannot emphasize how much RDP compromise we're seeing right now. It's pretty crazy. And that's one of the things I want to bring up. Ransom demands have increased a bit, though more in the mediums to larger business scale than in the SME market. In the smaller size markets, we're still seeing about 47% of businesses are looking at ransom demands that are hovering right under, a Bitcoin to just about a Bitcoin, depending how it's trading. I know it's at 12 grand, or it was at 12 grand earlier today per coin. But a lot of the clients we're seeing, where a lot of these victims are, being asked to fork over about 8,000 as an average. Some of them a little bit more, and at least most of them tend to get an okay, an okay discount, but that depends who you ask. But so we're seeing a lot in the 0 to 10, in the 10,000, closer to the $10,000 mark for the SME market. Let's keep again keeping that in mind. We're still seeing, we're still after that. It's the about 25,000 is the most common market, and then every once in a while, you have some of these groups that like to go after big money, like the Ryuk organization, who makes up a lot of the cases that we see that are in the 50,000, 80,000 plus dollar ransom requests. And as you can imagine, most SMEs shut down when they're looking at a six-figure ransom request. It's not even an option, which is likely, these threat actors know what they're doing, and it's not like they share with us a lot of their intent or mindset behind what they do, no matter what we try to fish out of them during negotiations or when we have to deal with them. But they are aware that cyber insurance is becoming a common thing. So we think the rise of cyber insurance, in a way, while it's good and great to have insurance, it's the threat actors are starting to pay attention. So that has likely some correlation to price increases. But I don't think it's much. A lot of these policies that we see when we are dealing with clients that have insurance, they're really not that robust. So, it can't cover a whole lot, if it even covers any. Often, we're finding that when victim has some sort of cyber insurance, it doesn't exactly cover the ransom itself. So very few carriers provide that sort of coverage that we're seeing out there in the SME market, which is, in some ways, a good thing as far as ransom demands. As you can imagine, it's quite difficult for SME, or a small business, to come up with 8,000, 10,000, 15,000 liquid on the drop of a dime. So negotiations, when data cannot be recovered, or when a business cannot survive without suffering irreparable harm due to loss of data, when that happens and a victim decides that they want to pay a ransom, negotiation is key here. It's a tough thing to deal with, right? To deal with these threat actors and provide that kind of a service. But in the end of the day, a lot of businesses out there see it. We have some information that I could share at a future date with you about data recovery rates, a little bit about what certain groups have offer as far as style of decryption, even support from the threat actor itself. There's some interesting information there, but I didn't want to get too deep into it tonight. One of the other stats, some of the other stuff I want to talk about, as far as ransomware. So, investigations are key here, especially for clients who have PII, PHI, or some sort of other sensitive information, right? The business interruption is obviously going to be key. So I cannot overemphasize the need for proper evidence preservation here. A business can return to at least somewhat operable stance substantially faster if they know that evidence needs to be preserved early on. It is very common for us to see a ransomware victim who does not take proper preservation steps. And when evidence is still untampered enough sufficiently to investigate, it'll include, days before they are ready to start rebuilding the environment or remediating the environment, because now they didn't know to preserve evidence. So that can cause further business interruption. Business interruption is already such a major problem with ransomware. We're seeing an average of 3 weeks to 5 weeks for most victims to be fully operational again post a ransomware incident. And especially for in the SME market, where we often find that these victims don't have proper backups implemented, and whatever data they had stored ends up encrypted, and they either have to rebuild their systems and take a loss on data, or they have to recover it through manual data entry, because they have some black and white files, or they have an old backup somewhere. And then sometimes some businesses end up actually paying a ransom. We see that happen. And even that takes time between the negotiation, the actual decryption tool being run in the environment, and setting everything back up. So a lot of time goes here, right? And the SME market's also, unfortunately, full of entities who don't always keep their systems very up to date. So we find that we often see issues during decryption or doing a rebuild, that just ancient, very old systems, legacy systems being used, and that just creates a huge slowdown, just due to processing power and the way that some of these applications are configured. It takes a long time to get them back up and running to where they were prior to the incident. So, these are some of the issues, but investigations are often recommended post a ransomware incident. More likely than not, a business should investigate, have some sort of investigation take place. Though any of you that are working in this SME market know, but I'm sure you know by now that there's a lot of resistance from the client. Sometimes they don't always. They're concerned with getting back up and running, number one, but so sometimes you have to use put those soft skills to use, and explaining to the client the reason why, understanding how things happen, what happened while they're in there, not just from a legal or breach notification perspective, but just from a security perspective is also important. So wanted to talk a little bit about mitigation efforts, right? What are the common tools that we're seeing out there that are helping businesses quickly resolve a ransomware situation, or not really feel much of an effect if it happens to them? Number one, it's cloud backups right now are the number one relief that we're seeing in the SME market. A lot of these businesses have classic network configurations, 1-2 servers in the house, in the environment, along with, a handful of endpoints and just a NAS backup or something like that. And the ones who happen to have some sort of cloud backup solution often end up being the ones who never have to consider paying a ransom, who can preserve evidence and immediately begin remediation of their production systems and use that unaffected data to bounce back. Now, I always like to do a little caveat there. It's a little bit of, I don't mean to spoil the fun, but it's, as I mentioned before, there's no silver bullet for anything digital, as you all know. With that being said, we do see cases here and there where a threat actor gains access or is knowledgeable enough to look for and often gain access to cloud backups. I actually have a case right now going on that started today where a client had a ransomware threat actor gathered credentials prior to executing the ransomware and logged onto Azure as the admin and deleted all their backups. So every once in a while that does happen. It's not nearly, it's not that common that we see that sort of activity, but threat actors are advancing, right? We used to never see a cloud backup be compromised, absent the files being corrupted prior to the incident, but we used to never see that happen a year and a half, 2 years ago. But now it's starting to become a little bit more common as the threat actors are evolving. Other common tools for mitigation of ransomware is going to be endpoint protection, EDR solutions. There's a good amount of decent stuff, of decent software solutions out there, services, active IT services that can help. Unfortunately, in the SME market, we don't see a whole lot of it. We're still seeing just a lot of commodity, antivirus software being utilized. So that's not exactly great, but we are starting to see a very happy trend in network segmentation, from newer businesses, and they're looking to protect, put in place some alerting software and EDR solutions that allow at least their IT, even if external, to get an alert if something that seems like a brute force attack or unusual traffic starts occurring locally, so they can put a stop, erect a firewall or do something to put a stop to what may be an incoming attack. So those are probably the most common tools that we're seeing currently. Other than that, there's, in this market specifically, there's not a whole lot else that we're seeing these clients do to mitigate against ransomware. We're always recommending multiple forms of backups. We think that EDR is great. However, it can cause a false sense, a false blanket of security there with some of these smaller businesses who are seeking a silver bullet solution. The backups are going to be huge, and training of their staff again is going to be large. It's going to be a large thing that a large scale thing that should be implemented in every business. A lot of ransomware does start from as a business email compromise. It's not always just RDP or some other sort of local exploit that's put in place. The other thing is another tool is simply credential management. That's one thing I wanted to also touch base here on is too many we see too many instances where especially in the SME market, where the business owner or one of the other business entities are admins locally, and these credentials often become compromised. They don't have separate credentials that are just user accounts. So you have a user that's doing work in the environment every single day, yet they have admin privileges. I could not disagree with that anymore. It's not a good idea to have admin credentials being utilized in the environment every single day by just a normal user. Threat actors are commonly utilizing credential harvesting tools such as Mimikatz. We see that a lot as a piece of malware that's executed in the environment. They execute it in RAM and gather credentials. And when you have a user that is there every single day using admin creds. You're at that time asking for a total takeover. And unfortunately, we see that far too often. That's as far as for the SMEs who can, who can't afford internal IT, who can't afford a robust plan against, ransomware, active monitoring. Those are probably going to be the common mitigation solutions that are available. The other thing I wanted to talk about, doesn't happen as much as the BCs and the ransomware, but I wanted to touch on a little bit during my time talking here with you guys today, is scamware. Unfortunately, elder fraud and just classic scams, those, what they used to call Nigerian scams, are still pretty common, whether it's through a web interface, unsecured website, whether it's someone posing as an antivirus vendor. We see a lot of compromises where the victim sees a message that they think is from McAfee or from Norton or something like that, and they recognize the name and they figured, oh, this is probably a legitimate, and they start interacting with these with this entity, and ends up giving up information or giving up credentials to their local system. And we're now starting to see, we've been seeing for a while now, the effects of scamware leading to system takeovers, credential jacking, and harvesting. Sometimes ransomware threat actors use this technique as a method to breach an environment. We're seeing a lot of identity theft because of scamware. I've personally have dealt with quite a few cases in the last few months where homes were bought, on the names of victims because of what initially started as a scam. And then threat actors are often just seeking more targets, so they'll use scamware and fake propaganda and prompts and unsecured websites where they can embed a link or some sort of message to get the attention of a potential victim who may not be paying attention, just to gather more victims, get access to address books and things of that sort. Finally, the other thing we're seeing in the SME market that happens, not too common, is a web portal compromise, mostly in the form of either a link being embedded in a portal hosted by the victim that takes the party interacting with that website to another location. We're sometimes seeing links that that allows for certain features that the victim didn't intend to have on their website. For example, we had a client the other day who did not offer a chat feature on their portal. They only had links for email and to dial, and just a phone number for their multiple locations. And a threat actor managed to brute force their WordPress credentials, got access to the portal, embedded a link, and this link led them to another page that they spoofed to look like the client's environment, and they were chatting with people and gathering folks' information. As reported by the victim, a few clients of theirs gave remote access to their systems. I'm not sure the reasons why, but they did, and they ended up having their systems compromised. Some of the complications, this is not very common, but some of the complications here, though, is most SMEs don't host their sites anymore. It's a lot of WordPress. It's a lot of some of these other sites. Trying to remember the name, escaping me real quick, but Squarespace and other websites that are easy setup sites that advertise simple site management, and often they don't provide a lot of security when it comes to authentication. Even some of them have coding that's not, or infrastructure that's not too strong. So threat actors that can often get a hold of the source code and then wreak havoc from there. And again, training. A lot of folks are not paying attention to prompts or things that they see on the web. So they're they're having their credentials harvested, and then they happen to be the ones who manage the site for the business. And then the threat actor sees that as an opportunity and uses their access to the portal to make changes, or to just act as them and gather information from folks interacting with that portal. So some of the considerations that we make, that we think SMEs need to take when it comes to their web portals is apply a need to know mentality to their security, right? That should be across the board, but especially here. If you have your site hosted by GoDaddy, or it's hosted by Squarespace, or whoever, I'm not picking on those people or anything like that, on those organizations, but if your site's hosted out there by a third-party company that just kind of takes care of everything, one of the only things you can do is secure your authentication to that environment. So hyper complex passwords, multi-factor authentication, proper maintenance and upkeep of whatever they use to interact to that site, endpoint wise, network, security wise, all these things if there's exploits there, they can be taken advantage of. And there are a lot of threat actors out there who are looking to compromise a web portal, because it's a very easy way nowadays to gather information from the public. People tend to often trust websites. I could not tell you how many times we find victims, not just of web portal compromises, but of all sorts of compromises, who are just browsing the web, no VPN, no attention to secured site signals or anything of that sort, and they're just out there interacting with whatever they want to see, and they're often taking very risky activity, and which leads to local system compromise. And then they go to work and update something on, update their menu on their website, or, update store hours or things of that sort. And the environment becomes compromised from an endpoint compromise, and complications become substantially larger. Especially, one of the things I like to also tell SMEs that they need to consider is, if you're going to have a web portal out there, look to not host any sensitive information if possible. So don't process the actual, if you can manage to provide a good user experience and not process credit card information and personal information directly on your portal, the better. Simply because if something does go wrong, not having that data there will simplify your life tenfold. That's basically it, folks. I just wanted to, not get too in the weeds and any of these things, but I wanted to provide an opportunity to get a little bit of this message out there, some of the problems that we're seeing in the SME market. I want to open up for questions, give you guys the ability to ask whatever you want. I'm here for you.
Cool. Eber, thank you very much. That was a lot of great information. I can relate to it in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to training, because there's a lot of great companies out there. If you guys know of any, just, keep an eye out for them. So. Okay, there's my shameless plug. You guys all know I work at KnowBe4. If anybody has any questions, drop them into the chat. And we have Eder's information there. That's fantastic. You guys are welcome to reach out to him. We will get a copy of the presentation and make it available as well. Fantastic. All right, let me see if I can. I'm using my other laptop to share over here. So let's see if I can get it shared over here. And we're going to get Mr. Leifheit queued up over there. Cool. You there, Glenn? You can unmute there, buddy. Whoops, move that. So, as I said earlier, I'm real excited to have Glenn here presenting. I've known Glenn for numerous years, I think dating back to our ISC Squared Security Congress when it was here in Orlando the second time. Probably like 2016, I think, was when we first met. We served together on the North American Advisory Council. He was the chair, so we did a lot of, whoops, I left out the word MAN off of that. Sorry about that. But he was the chair for the North American Advisory Council. He's a senior security program manager over at Microsoft, and he just dropped into the chat last month's or last quarter's Microsoft Digital Defense Report. Lots of great information in there supporting what Eder was filling us in. But also Glenn is also the 2017 ISC Squared President Award winner as well. He joins a very elite group of security professionals. But I'm real excited that Glenn is here. I'm going to shut up talking so that, Glenn, you can start sharing, buddy, and you can take it away as you talk to us about mentorship.
All right.
So, take it away.
Hey, right there.
Let's see.
So many things to share these days.
Yeah, right.
And so many things not to accidentally share.
Yeah. Heaven forbid.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Can I still see it? Or
Yep.
did it not go? Okay.
I see it.
You see the real presentation or just PowerPoint?
I see PowerPoint.
Okay.
So you got to swap.
Well, yeah. So many displays doing so many things. That's the problem with so many monitors, So we'll just roll with it this way because no sense in delay.
All right.
So anyway, my name's Glenn Leifheit. I've known James for years, and thank you, James, for inviting me to come on. I could have spoken for hours on conversation on the last presentation. So I think it's there's so much to learn out of that area and how much to pay attention to. And it is a really serious area. My team's one of the ones that can help build this digital defense report for Microsoft. And we saw a lot of different things, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about mentorship, which is, why is somebody from Microsoft talking about mentorship? Well, mentorship's been a core piece of my career for a long period of time. And one of the things that I do at Microsoft, I'm part of the Customer Security and Trust organization at Microsoft, which is part of our legal organization, which is a strange place to have an engineer, but we are centralized, so it helps. And I don't have to abide by any product requirements. But at the same time, I also lead several mentorship projects at Microsoft, including a company-wide initiative to drive mentorship and provide additional trainings and so forth. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here to provide mentorship or to help folks understand about mentorship and help you guys grow as part of that. And feel free to chime in with questions. I'm happy to have them by raising your hand or whatever, and we can drive that way as well. So a quick little story about a quick little story about how I got into mentorship. Over the years, you always have a few mentors in high school and college and in your early career, but in my mid-career, I actually had an absolutely amazing mentor, and it kind of goes like this. So I was actually almost laid off by a company that I was working for at the time, and he called me back, and one of my previous bosses had called me and says, would you ever have any interest in coming back and working for me? I'm like, well, yeah, maybe. I enjoyed working for you. Why? He's like, there's something happening. I'm like, and then he just left it at that. I'm like, well, okay, great. And this was right before Thanksgiving. And I didn't hear anything from him for a few weeks. And then when it came to 2 weeks before, or the week before Christmas break, he called me again and he says, well, bring your resume. And I think I've got something for you. And if you get severance, don't spend any of it. I'm like, what? So something's happening? Because my boss doesn't know about this. Nobody knows. And then they had a holiday closure, and I came back January 3rd, and they had me interview with the CISO, and they announced the layoffs, and I was not part of the layoffs. I actually moved into security as part of my role. And as part of that, I was introduced to Scott. And Scott is my mentor that I owe pay it forward to for decades now, having worked with him. So I was replacing him on the security team because he was terminally ill. And while that, I wish he had not, passed and all of those things, he left me a tremendous gift. And that was the mentorship that he provided. We worked side by side for about last 6 to 8 weeks of his working, and the last 9 months of his life, we worked side by side as much as we could through that time period. And he taught me so many things about life and about security. And having been a former NSA analyst and a former analyst at the CIA, and then also working, in the public sector or the private sector, he had a lot of great stories to share, and it was an amazing learning opportunity for me. But it really was the learnings that I got about how he lived life and how he learned to take advantage of the opportunities that he had while he had them during that short last spirit of life that he had. The last time I spoke with him was about a couple of days before he passed, and his wife was holding up his phone, and he was determined he was going to have that last hour of mentorship with me to make sure that we had that. And I think I've cherished that, and I know it's kind of an emotional story and so forth, but it really has driven home to me that mentorship is important, and there are so many different ways to have mentorship. So since then, I've been really driving to understand mentorship and really figure out how do we better each other through mentorship as part of it. So when we first start talking about mentorship, the first things this will always come up. As a mentor, people are like, am I qualified to be a mentor? I don't think I'm qualified. I don't have enough knowledge for that. I'm too new in the industry. I'm too young. I don't feel like I should be a mentor. I don't feel representative of what a mentor should be. What would I bring to the table? What are my responsibilities as a mentor? I don't have time. And of course, I don't need a mentor. I didn't meet a mentor, so why should I? And then, on a mentee, we always ask the opposite question is like, who should I ask? There's so many people, and I don't know who and what. What am I committing to? How do I do I need to prepare? What do I need to do? How does it work? For as an internal thing, should I ask Satya Nadella? Yeah, of course. Or Harry Shum, who's the former head of research. Those seem to be the first people think of when they look for a mentor. And I'll be talking about most of the answers to most of those questions here. I think to start with, odds are going directly to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company probably isn't the perfect place to go for mentorship. It's, certainly he'd be an amazing mentor in the time that he has, but I'm guessing he probably doesn't have time, and it wouldn't serve either of you very well. Most of the time it would be very coordinated. So as part of that, let's go back to mentorship for a second. I think one of the things that I learned early on, I had a mentorship, actually one of my first ones at Microsoft, and it actually was a train wreck. It was an absolute disaster. And one of the reasons that I learned is that over time, my manager finally called me, you guys, he's not up to speed. He should be able to do these things. And why weren't you mentoring him? And so forth. And he's like, he never asked the question. But the answer was I was new to Microsoft. I didn't even know the acronyms, which we can form entire paragraphs of acronyms at Microsoft. And what I really wanted to understand was that I didn't know the answer or enough information to actually ask the questions at that point, being new to the company and new to the area areas that we were working in. So one of the things that we've talked about is now that there's a role of coaching before you get to mentorship. And really, it's very similar to mentorship. But the idea behind coaching is to really help the mentor guide the mentee to help enable them to get up to speed in the right way, that you can have the conversation where the mentee drives the mentorship. There's sometimes, when you're at a new company, sometimes you need that. When you're jumping into a new field, you may need to do that. And the importance of that is recognizing as a mentee, you want to recognize yourself as, I really want to do this and I really need the information, but I don't know enough to get started. That's when you'd want to, we talk about this, that's when you'd want to make sure that you communicate to your mentor that that's really where you're at from that part. And as a mentor, you're going to want to make sure that you provide them enough information so that they're able to grow and become hit that mentorship cycle as part of that. And then there's mentorship, which is the standard, the mentee drives the mentor to have that conversation and really have an impact on both of you. And then eventually, if you hit that utopian place, and I have with several mentors now, where you're both a mentor and a mentee at the same time. I have several of them where, for example, it almost feels like old friends talking versus mentors and mentees, but we still make sure we cover the specific grounds, but we help each other. I'm an individual contributor at Microsoft. So one of mine is a senior leader at Microsoft, and I work with him to help him understand, why are his developers not really understanding, the message that he's driving and things like that. And I can really help him on the ground front from that perspective, and he can help me understand how my leadership team is working and why things are the way they are. And maybe there's some, upper management edict that I don't know about that is really helping drive some things within the company, as well as, help each other with different skills, because we each come to each other with very varied backgrounds, and it helps us all grow from that perspective. So next is there's many areas to cover, as you talk about mentorship. Most often we talk about skills. I want to go learn a programming language. I want to go learn this about security. I want to really be able to dive deep into encryption, or how do I deal with ransomware and things like that? There are so many skills to come about. Mentorship is an amazing way to gain skills and some experience as you work through that. We also talk about careers. How do I get up the chain, or how do I transition or move roles, for example? And those are really the two core biggest mentorship areas you see in a company perspective. And then, at Microsoft, one of the things I learned is I relocated to Microsoft from Minneapolis to Redmond. It was quite the culture shock. I used to have a huge backyard and a pond and all this stuff, and now my house costs 5 times as much, and I don't know that there's enough place for my car basically is about the size of my lot. It's just not very big, and it's the reality of part of it. But as part of relocation, one of the things you don't know is, where do I go get my haircut? How do I deal with the transition? One of the things that would happen in our group is we traveled to customer sites, and so you'd be there about 3 weeks, and then it's about time for you to go on your first customer visit, and you'd go your customer visit, and I'd fly to someplace like Indianapolis or Australia or Taiwan, and of course I'd leave my spouse and my son behind, and now they're alone in a new city, barely relocated, probably still in temporary housing if they haven't gotten to your full-time home yet. And then they are left with you traveling. And so really having a relocation mentorship, if you do have to deal with relocation, it's a really important thing to help support that environment, not just as the employee, but also the family as well. Because the reality is it's a family thing when you ask somebody to relocate. There's also company mentorship. Lord knows when you come into Microsoft, there is so much to know and so much to work on that you need to really understand, what it is. And so you really need someone very specifically to help you drive around. How do I deal with the organization? What is it? What do all of these things mean? How do I, be successful in the company? And how do I meet the cultural values of the company and how I work? And, am I fitting into the, enabling myself during meetings, things like that. also cultural mentorship as well. So cultural, I look at two ways. I think first is, obviously cultural within the company. Do you fit within the team's culture? How do you better that your team and your group and your company? But it also has to do with all your travel and all the work with international customers and international team members, and cultural diversity as a whole. I mean, it's a huge thing right now, and will continue to be. And one of the things I learned is my first trip to India, for example, I really played the Midwesterner, even though I wasn't intending to. I went in very uninformed, didn't really think about it. Coming from an area where we really spent a lot of time on the farm and a lot of time in the dealing with cattle and things like that, and that's not really how it works in India. And it's a very different culture from that perspective in terms of the fact that there's cows roaming on the roads, and it's different from how it operates and how it works. And I think the first time I was there, I was delivering a training and I was absolutely dumbfounded. I got 10 minutes into my training, as opposed to getting a nod. I asked, "Do you understand?" I was in the United States, you get a nod or you get a head shake. I got a head wobble or bobble, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with that. And it, really kind of almost blew my mind. And then as I and during one of the breaks, I talked with one of my coworkers and adjusted through the session that first day of training, and the rest of the days went remarkably smoothly. But all of that was about cultural adaptation and mentorship that I needed prior to going. And now before I travel to a foreign country, I speak with somebody who can help me get through the cultural issues of that, to help make sure that I'm respectful of the culture that I'm going to, but also B, making sure that, I'm effective while I'm there as well, as part of it. Because there was nothing faster to draining my energy when I was trying to do this big presentation, and all of a sudden it disappeared from my view, when all of a sudden it was that head bobble. I just didn't know what to do from that perspective. And then of course, moving on to the other areas to cover, life mentorship. As I've learned through working with with Scott, one of my first big mentors, I think it was really important for me to understand how to deal with life mentorship. And in past years, I've had, since then, I've had mentees who've lost their spouse, who've been through hard times, who were sent on military leave or military duty and came back injured. There were a lot of different things, and as part of that mentorship, being able to at least be there to help support them and provide some life mentorship as they went through some of those changes was really important, because in the end, they were all better for the fact that I chose to dive into that area. And that doesn't mean you have to dive into that with every mentorship. But I think one of the things that's really important is making sure that you understand where you should dive and where you shouldn't dive with that mentor. So as a mentor, what do you need to understand and what do you need to do? I think to start with, make sure you're sharing your passion. Like, there's nothing more, tiring and exhausting than meeting with a mentor who really doesn't want to be with you and really doesn't want to talk about what you want to talk about. So really trying to match that passion and being able to answer those questions in a good way, I think is a really important piece of that. Always be willing to lend a hand, because sometimes the question that the mentee asks isn't necessarily going to be the advice that they really need. It may be a step or two beyond that. So as a mentor, go through and take that extra step and always don't be afraid to lend a hand. But at the same time, it's okay to break the social norms. A great example is the fact that we do a lot of reverse mentorship at Microsoft, where it's someone who is not as likely to have been, your mentor. Like, for instance, when that mentee who I had, who lost her spouse, that was a tremendously hard time for her. But later on, as we continued our mentorship, I, had some crazy things happen in my life, and she actually became my mentor through life, and really kind of broke through those norms of, hey, this isn't what we usually talk about, but hey, I can support you through that. Then also, don't be afraid to give from the heart. I think it's really important to to do this and really understand that, if you're giving in a good quality way, people will pay it forward and it'll continue to grow and you'll make things happen. And you really do make the world a better place. The number of people, I've got a mentee just now who unfortunately left Microsoft and went over to Google. I'm sorely disappointed that she did, but at the same time, the growth that she's having is absolutely amazing. And it was really important for her to actually have that growth, to be able to spread their wings and so forth. As someone, when you work at a place like Microsoft and you have these, as a large company and you have people who've only been at that company, you want to make sure that they get, broader experience because it's going to be okay for them to grow. And it's okay to go the distance as well. I think one of the things that I really learned with Scott was that he really did kind of go that distance for us and really kind of helped me grow much further than I ever expected. And many of my mentorships have gone further than I ever expected them to, but it was right for the mentorship and it was right for the time. I didn't push where I didn't belong. And, I was, it just kind of was a very natural cadence to that piece. But go where is natural but it's okay to go that distance. And remember that lives will be changed as part of it. It's really important. As you add some of those things, I think too, the real key things is, really understanding how do you mentor and mentor in your own way. I think there's no right or wrong way to provide mentorship. Part of this is about enabling people to be successful and so forth, but you need to do that how your personality does it, in a way that you can do it successfully. I've had a lot of people who tried to mimic mentorships and relationships that they've seen other people have. And those are mentorships that have the tendency to fail and not work very well. And then ensure that as a mentor that you're providing follow through for your mentees. Because I think that goes on both sides. There's things you're going to ask of each other. And if you ask it, you need to deliver on those things, because otherwise you really minimize that trust, because you really do need to build a relationship of trust with your mentee. From a mentee perspective, I think one of the key is who should I ask? I think it's really an important thing. I think depending upon your company, it can be very different in terms of how you might look for an internal mentor versus another. If you have a program, fantastic, that's great. Excuse me. But sometimes that program isn't going to serve your needs. It may be specifically for a certain type of mentorship or so forth. So oftentimes you can ask your manager, you can ask coworkers. But the other thing that, if you normally what I recommend, if you're at a larger company that can do this, is like at Microsoft, I usually recommend you want to be, mentored by somebody, probably up a level or two, a little bit more senior than you, but you also want somebody who has, who, if you're in the same organization or organizational hierarchy, but not directly related, because you don't necessarily want things, you want things to be an open, free discussion, and you don't necessarily want them like going back to your boss, etc. So you want to be able to have that safety net as part of that. I'll cover more about, where do you find a mentor here in a little bit, but I think it's really important to understand that there are so many ways to find a mentor, and sometimes it's the least likely places that you will find the most important mentor that you'll have. Understand where you're at as a mentee. I think it's really important to not, oversell where you're at. One of the things that we often run into is with mentees is they're like, yeah, I know all of that. Mostly because they're trying to exude some confidence and they're trying to make sure that. But I think the important thing is the mentor isn't trying to help you just rediscover what you know. They're trying to help fill gaps and holes. For example, for me, I've actually don't have a computer science degree. I've got a degree in urban planning and American history. I'm totally self-taught from a technology perspective, which is fantastic. And I've learned a ton because of it. And I come to it with a different angle than a lot of people because of it. But one of the other problems that I also have is I've got holes that have to be filled because I may have a gap in knowledge in one area or another. And that's one of the things that I really encourage folks to be able to explore as part of that. Then also, communicate your expectations to the mentor. tell them, hey, I need some coaching. Hey, or, I really am looking for this goal or driving towards, I want to be a manager, or I want to transition from a developer to security, or whatever that might be. Be really communicative on what your expectations are, because none of them are wrong, but if you don't tell anybody, it can never be right, and you can never guide to the right place. And the other part is really, and a lot of this ends up on the mentee, is really work on building a relationship of trust. That means about, making sure that you're solid and reliable about, showing up and following through and things like that, but also be really cognizant of being present when you're being mentored as part of it. Always come and be prepared as part of it. I think one of the things that the folks that don't get the most out of mentorship are the ones that just show up. They haven't done any groundwork. They haven't thought about what they want to talk about. And sometimes that happens in general, just because, let's face it, we're all incredibly busy people, and we don't always have time to do everything. But at the same time, it can't happen week after week after week, or month after month after month. As that perspective, be open to feedback, because the reality is you're there to grow, and feedback is really important as part of it. And don't be afraid to be yourself. I think one of the interesting things that I've seen is, the mentorships that are the most are the ones that I can, I roll with my normal awkward sense of humor and work through, they understand my sarcasm, and it really works, from that perspective. And they understand my passion for skills books and driving those things, and it embraces it, and it becomes better, and the mentorship becomes better because of it. Make sure you give as well as you receive as part of this. You aren't there just to take as a mentee. I've had several mentees who've been like, just gimme, and they don't want to provide anything back. Those run out of fuel really quickly. It's something that really will drain the mentorship, as well as your relationship, and really help you erode that relationship of trust you've tried to build. Be ready to share your experiences as well. I think one of the great things that I've learned is, within Microsoft and outside, is so many people have a different viewpoint because they're at a different place where you're at. A great example is, when you're doing a reverse mentorship, even Satya at Microsoft, he's got a reverse mentor. He's always has someone who is a mentee or a mentor who is 1 year out of college or so in that first year. It's an amazing honor for that person to be a mentor to a CEO, but at the same time, that helps him understand the groundswell of where are you at with people coming in, and where does that lead, and how does that work from that perspective. Be ready to grow more than you expected as well. I think that's something that's really important as you do this. I think there are people who put borders on what they expect to get out of mentorship and stuff like that. The reality is most of these are very open-ended, very broad. There's no real formulation from that perspective. I've got some very formal mentors, where I show up every month and we have our conversation, and we have an in-depth conversation, and we prepare notes, and we send agendas to each other, and we do all these things. Then I've got very undocumented and very, very informal ones. For example, I have several mentorships that just happen over Facebook Messenger, and it just happens, and periodically it's like a daily or every other day little conversation, and that was about it. And it doesn't take a lot off of me, doesn't take a lot off of them, but the growth that you see is absolutely amazing when you have those types of opportunities to do. Because sometimes you're there to help adjust mindset. Sometimes you're there to find some other things. And then the other part is, unfortunately, no one is networking, because not every mentorship is right. I've had mentorships where, I thought for sure it was going to be the right thing. And lo and behold, we just weren't at the right place. That person was just too busy. I wasn't at that place at Microsoft at the time where they were ready to mentor me yet. I didn't have enough knowledge. I didn't have enough experience in the company. So she didn't have time to fill in that gap when all the busyness that she had. But 2 or 3 years later, we lined back up, and now we meet about every 6 months, and we have a good, solid relationship, and it's been really important. And the other part about that is not every relation. Sometimes it's not working at the beginning, and sometimes it'll work later. Other times, it may just work for a little while, because not every mentorship is designed to be forever. Some things could be 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings. Some things could be much substantially longer from that perspective. And I think the longest one I have ongoing right now that is a mentor for me is at 8 years. And the longest mentee I have is at 13 years. But I also have had mentorships that are very, very short. Yeah, and then, how do I find a mentor? I think, again, sometimes it's depending on the company you work in. I know when some folks are working at smaller companies, it's obviously a very different conversation. If you're one of 2 security folks and you're looking for security mentorship, that's probably not the right place. But if you're at a bigger company, you might look internally. Other places, don't be afraid to use your network. I think one of the things that I've learned as I go through this, and I can't even stare at that typo without fixing it. There we go. Anyway, so looking through your network, you'd be really surprised at folks who will mentor you and be open to it. Because I think the biggest thing that I've learned is by engaging each other's passions is where you can get amazing mentorship. In part of it, another quick story. I've engaged with a new mentor over COVID as part of it, and what this one was, I just reached out to a developer friend of mine who I used to know in Minnesota. He moved to New Jersey. He started a couple of companies. Now he develops still, but he leads these larger organizations as part of it. And I reached out, and we've been having a fairly long-term, or probably since April, we've been doing mentorship to each other as part of it. And it just started out of a conversation, and we just started talking about the things that we wanted to talk about, and it just naturally occurred as part of it. Sometimes that can happen. Don't be afraid to go in the industry as well. And James and many other folks in the in your chapter can certainly help identify folks for you or work with you to understand it. But I think the important part is understand what you're looking for and look for it in the community. Do you see someone in the chapter that might be they've done some things that you'd like to know about? Just ask about those things that they've done, or maybe the interesting projects they've been working on. Because again, it's about talking about somebody else's passion that can be your passion as well, and those things really kick off that relationship well. Don't be afraid to get something in the community. I got two of my mentees actually came out of my gym. It's not formal. It's not what I would have expected. I didn't go looking for it. It just kind of spontaneously occurred, because they were at a point I was willing to give, and they were at a point where they needed growth as part of it. And just be present. So if you're a mentor, be open to it. And if you're a mentee, don't be afraid to ask. Maybe there's somebody who's just always positive and really needs to, in this COVID time, maybe you need a little help with your mindset. Find some positive people and be that and provide mentor. Look for a mentor in that way. It could be through an introduction, and sometimes it's amazing where those introductions come from. You just don't know. Again, any connection at all really can help you lead to a mentorship. And then I'll finish it off here with a quick story. I was not intending for this to happen when I did it, looking for a mentor, but earlier during COVID, I found out that one of my son's favorite food items was not going to be made anymore, and the company was really hard to get, and I was trying to understand it and so forth. And so I actually reached out on LinkedIn and connected with the CEO of that company, and reached out and said, "Hey, I'm really interested in these. We love them in the house. Why can't we? What's going on? How can we find some of these things and this product?" And he responded back. Accepted my invite, responded back. We've been having a long ongoing conversation, probably since May or so. And as part of that, I learned that, the company is actually going out of business. Part of it was that their supply of some of their food supply actually dried up because it came from China, and China wasn't exporting anything, so he really had no product at that point. So there was no business at that point. But he was a very experienced CEO. He's been very willing to have continued conversations, and not every conversation's I'm not learning about a ton of technical information from him, but I'm learning all sorts of things about how the food industry works and how he worked at trying to save a company like that, and all the steps and things that he went through that. And those are all amazing leadership lessons that I'm able to take in because of those things. So that's really what I had prepared for you guys today. I'm more than happy to have some conversations with you or answer some questions, and I'm happy to share the deck, and feel free to reach out. But thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Fantastic. Good info all around. I know that I've got several mentors myself, and I've got several mentees that I work with as well. And Glenn, you and I are just good buds. We just talk to each other and, shoot shit all the time anyway. So cool. All right. So there's Glenn's contact info. You can catch him on Twitter. There's his email. We'll have the deck available. So what I want to do now real quick, if you want to stop sharing there, Glenn.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. This will be the fun part. Hopefully everybody can see the kind of quasi-looking Excel spreadsheet that's on here. So what I have here are all the folks that are attended here this evening. And what I have over here, these are the ISC Squared CERT members and the list of your names. Actually, what I'm going to do real quick is just hide this for security purposes. And now I'm going to hide this for security purposes. Probably if anybody screenshot it, oh well. Sorry. But this is to give away our other two passes that we have for ISC Squared Security Congress. So these are all the eligible folks that we have here. I have a query that I've written that will basically pick a number between 1 and 31. It will look up at this list and give me the person's name. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pick 2. I'm going to put in the equal sign. Now, the way this is going to work is as soon as I hit the enter key, it's going to give me the first name. That will be our first winner. Then I'm going to copy and paste the value to a cell below it so we can track this. It will then generate the second name. What I need to, and unfortunately what it is going to do is randomly pick a third name because that's how it works. Fortunately, I apologize to that person. That third name's not going to get picked. But it's the only way I know how to do this right now using the Excel spreadsheet. So, all right. So I'd say give me a drum roll, but everybody's muted. So, all right. So our first winner that is going to be getting the one of the 2 prizes is David Healy. Congratulations, David. If you can, I'm hoping you're still on the call. Can you unmute and verify that you can use the ticket and we'll attend next month?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right. So let me copy this. And like I said, when I do the paste here, it's going to pick the next name. Mr. Heisinger, congratulations, sir. You on the call? I saw you there earlier. Yeah, there you are. You got to unmute. Oh.
I should be unmuted now. You hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
I'm already paid attendee, so give it to somebody else.
So we'll pass it on. Thank you very much, Patrick. We look forward to seeing you over there. So I'm just going to basically come back up here, and there's our next winner, Joseph Termine. Joseph, are you on the call? Let's see, Joseph. Looking for the JT list in here. You got to unmute if you're on the call. Joseph.
Looks like he's there. He's trying to unmute, but maybe a speaker.
Okay. Oh, there I see the number. Okay.
There is a pulse.
There is a pulse. Oh. Are you able to unmute yourself there, Joseph? iPad won't unmute. Okay. Are you able to use the pass, Joseph? Thank you. Okay, so you will attend. Okay, good. He's texting us so everybody can see it through the chat window. Cool. So Joseph is the other one. You know what? I'm in a good mood tonight. Let's pick one more because we have another pass that came out from last year's when we won as a chapter. We got a free pass, and I'm just going to write Joseph's name down here because I don't want to have it pick another one just yet. David Healy. So last year, because our chapter won the award, we got a free pass. Fortunately, it wasn't in value only. We just got a free Congress pass. So, well, Brian, okay. So we have an extra pass to give out to somebody. So I'm going to press the enter key again, and that will pick our third winner on who will get to go to Congress. So here we go. Third time's a charm. Whoops, didn't do it. Let's try this one more time. Here we go. Joel Moser, Mr. Moser. Are you there, Joel? You were there earlier. I hope you didn't drop out, buddy.
No, I didn't drop, but I already have a paid entry, so please pass mine along. Merry Christmas to somebody else.
Fantastic. Cool. All right, here we go.
Thank you.
Going to get to a point I may not be able to give this away, but no, I know we're going to give it away. Here we go. One more time. Joel Moser, why did you come up again? Let's try that again. There we go. Mr. Finley. Where are you, Steven?
Hey, James.
Hey, bud. Can you use it?
Yes, I can use it.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent. Good. All right. Well, I will be reaching out to ISC Squared tomorrow, and they will send you all an email with the code that will allow you access, allow you to register and attend for free for the 3 days. So again, there is the Microsoft report that Glenn put in the chat. Go check that out. Lots of good information. Great for presentations or communicating to upper management or to students if you're a teacher. Again, did my camera just kick off? It probably did. I just want to thank everybody. I'm going to kill the. Hang on a second. Let me stop sharing. There we go. Thank everybody again for coming out this evening. We will see you all November 16th, and then we will do another one in December. Next month, we'll have more information with regards to next year. I saw some thumbs up on the book club. That's cool. Glad to see some folks will be interested in that. That'll be something we will. It's great when we can get some feedback in this virtual environment. But again, thank you all for your time this evening. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Have a great Halloween. If we can do it this week, and we will see you all next month. Thank you, everybody.